Hey, welcome everyone to the Drone Harmony webinar. So my name is David and I'm VP Product and co-founder at Drone Harmony. And I'll have the pleasure of presenting Drone Harmony to you today. I'll be co-hosting with Janine, who is responsible for marketing in Drone Harmony, and she will help me with the organization and with the Q&A session that we will have in the end. So today we will talk about Drone Harmony's products, about the platform, the workflow, many different things that are related to working with Drone Harmony to capture data with drones. And we're aiming at a 30 to 40 minute presentation and a Q&A session of 15 to 20 minutes. So we will record this presentation. So don't worry if you miss something or if you want to share it with a colleague later on. And we will make this available for you. You'll be able to review things or share with colleagues all of the material that will be covered today. Also, in the Q&A session, please feel free to ask questions also during the presentation. We will be reviewing them and we'll be answering as many of them as we can during the webinar itself. And the questions that we cannot answer due to time constraints, we will follow up on in emails after the webinar. So first of all, I would like to thank all of you that you have taken the time out of your busy schedule to come and see and learn about Drone Harmony. The presentation today will be focused on the basics of Drone Harmony, but along the way, I will talk about more in-depth things as well. So I think that everybody will be able to take something away from the presentation today. So what are our learning goals for this webinar? So learn a little bit about the platform, about the different interfaces that we have and how the cloud works. A bit about the planning workflow. How does the planning workflow exactly work in Drone Harmony? The interfaces, 2 and 3D interfaces. How do we work with them? Where is a 2D interface useful? Where is a 3D interface useful, and so on. How can we work in a group? So if we are an organization where several stakeholders are working with the platform to capture data, and how do we organize the work between us? And definitely I'll touch upon many different tips and tricks that we use when we work with Drone Harmony and that we've built into the platform that also perhaps seasoned users among you might not know about. And definitely we'll also talk a little bit about the future, what we have in store for 2020. We'll spend a few words on that towards the end of the presentation. So just a remark about the Q&A. In case you're not familiar with Zoom, you're always able to ask a question. It will appear on our panel. To do so, there is a Q&A button. And depending on the device you're using, you can find the Q&A button, and there you can enter a question. So let's get started. So first of all, what is the Drone Harmony platform? What is it for? So the Drone Harmony platform is a platform that's designed to ease data acquisition, to make it possible to acquire high quality data using our drones around complex infrastructure. So perhaps some of you know this already, but we aim the platform at automating the data capture process as much as possible. So the components of the platform are the Drone Harmony web application, which is a web-based planning application, the Drone Harmony mobile application that runs on Android devices, and the Drone Harmony cloud. And today we will touch upon all of these things and see some of the aspects of working with each one of them and how they connect together to enable the data acquisition workflow that we're interested in. So let's just jump straight into it. So the first thing I'll do is I'll present a demonstration to you in the web-based planning interface. And this demonstration is not going to go into too much detail. What I'll show you is I'll basically show you a little bit on how I work when I work with Drone Harmony, and a lot of the aspects of the platform that are unique to Drone Harmony will surface in this presentation. And then later on in the webinar, I will start going a bit deeper into different things that we're doing. So let me switch over now to the browser where I have the web-based planning interface open. At this stage, I will also turn off the video to not distract you anymore. And we'll be able to focus on the application itself. So here we are in Drone Harmony web. So as you can see, we have a rather clean screen. We have a certain map in front of us, and the URL of the web-based application is app.droneharmony.com. So you can reach the web-based planning application by just navigating in your browser to app@droneharmony.com. So I will now full screen so that we have as much of the screen as possible to see the demonstration. So before I start doing anything, just a few words about what we see here. So we have three main panels here. The left panel enables me to control the state in the application. So I have different tools here, and I will touch upon these tools later on. They're enabling me to create certain objects in the scene and so on and so forth. The top panel enables me to interact with maps, search places, and switch between the two interfaces. So we'll go into the details quite soon. And we also have access to the menu here, as well as to some settings on the right-hand side. And I will talk a little bit about the different settings. Some settings are extremely important to know about, and I'll touch upon these things later. And finally, we have some tools related to viewing filters. I'll go into that later, and some editing tools here, as well as zoom and zoom options over here. So those are the main things. So let's just dive straight into it. So let me just open a state in Drone Harmony. So I'm going to the menu, site storage, and I will load the site. So when I load the site, I have here the list of sites that the Drone Harmony Cloud has in store for my user. So I'll just select the first one, and I will load the latest version of this inspection site. So as soon as I'm doing this, you see that some additional overlays have just appeared on the screen. So what I have here is both objects that represent things in the environment that you see behind in the map, and missions that I've already planned. So let's go into the things step by step. So first off, I will, in the filters, I will turn off the visibility for all of these things, and just for me to be able to see what is there behind on the map that we're looking at. If in case you want to take a look at what is the actual inspection site that you're working on at the moment. So this is some inspection. This is some industrial site here in Zurich, Switzerland. So I can quickly take a look at that. Now let's bring these overlays back. So what I want to do, you've seen that behind each one of these yellow buildings, yellow overlays, there is a building. So perhaps I'm interested in inspecting the roof of this middle building over here. So let me just color it differently so that I have an easy visual on how this building looks like for me. So the orange building, I want to inspect the roof of this building. So let me show you how I would do this. So I have my overlays, and first off, I'll jump quickly into the 3D view. So the 3D view represents the actual information that we have in the application that the application actually used to plan flights. So the 2D overlays that we see in the map actually represent these 3D objects that are placed somewhere in the scene. So let's go back. So we start the planning now. So I click on the plus here on the bottom right corner. So this plus icon over here is my access to all the mission planning capabilities. So I press on the plus, and I'm prompted with so-called mission plan catalog. So in the plan catalog, I have a collection of patterns, and the pattern I'm interested in now is just so-called top-down pattern. So I'll pick the top-down pattern. Once I pick the pattern, I'm asked to pick the scene object to which I want to apply it. And we already said that we want to inspect the roof of the orange building. So let's just pick that one. Next thing, I'm asked to select a position for my liftoff. So I just quickly zoom in here. And let's say I want to I'm planning to take off and land somewhere around this parking lot over here. I'll use the same landing spot as a takeoff spot. And then we enter this kind of interface. So on the right-hand side, I have a 3D view of the environment. This enables me to have kind of a good visual on how things are. So I'm going to be planning a mission now. On the left, I'm going to be populating parameters. And on the right, I'm going to see how this mission will look like for the parameters that I currently have. So first thing first is I need to determine the flight altitude. So let's pick 10 meters for this particular inspection. And as soon as I finish populating this parameter, you see that I have already some mission appearing here. And 10 meters for me here means always 10 meters for a top-down flight. It would always mean 10 meters above the structure. So that's 10 meters above the roof here. Now, next thing I can try to do is I see that I have quite a lot of overlap between the images here. I'm not interested in photogrammetry for this particular mission. All I want to do is I want to cover with images this roof. So I can go over to the overlap tab and I can reduce some of the overlap parameters just to have less data. I don't need so much data. I just want to have pictures of the entire roof. So I reduce the overlap parameters to 20. I can either use the slider or input them like that. Okay, now I want to fly this mission with an M210 and with an X5S camera. So how do I tell the application that? Well, I go over to the camera parameter here and I pick M210 RTK among the drones and then an S5S camera over here. And the changes that I make are always immediately impacting the mission that I'm planning here. So of course, it's important for the planner to know what camera you're going to be using for this mission in order to plan the mission the ideal way. Okay, so another little spin to just see that everything is as I intended to be. I can also quickly switch to the map view and have a quick look from above. So this is how the mission would look like, the dotted line over here. Okay, and back to 3D. Good, so we can generate this mission. As soon as I click on generate, this mission now exists in my state and I can synchronize it, load it on my mobile device and start flying. So I'm done planning my new roof mission. So let's go back to map view. Here I have it as well. Now it's an object in my scene. It will appear in my filter menus on the right and so on and so forth. And just quickly, let's click on it and see what it's composed of. So I'm clicking on this mission and you see that as soon as I have a mission that I've planned, I can already start interacting with it. I can touch single waypoints, I can add new waypoints. So I just quickly do something like that for the sake of the demonstration. So I added the new waypoint here in between, I can move it and so on and so forth. And I can select it, I can play around with it. So there is a quite high granularity of what I can do. So let's undo these actions real quick. Okay, that's it. So I'm happy with what I've done. And now perhaps I want to send this to the operator in the field to actually perform this flight. So for this, what I will do is I will go back to my menu, save this site, and I will just save it, overwrite the previous version. And by overwrite, it actually doesn't delete previous version. It just creates a new version of the same state. So I'll just save it and everything's fine. I can now continue working on other inspection sites and so on and so forth. So that's it for the first demo. So let's quickly jump into some of the main aspects that we've already touched upon. So first thing first, the workflow. So the workflow in Drone Harmony is quite different from other tools for planning missions. So we call it scene-based workflow. What do we mean by scene-based workflow? By scene-based workflow, we mean that instead of starting off by placing waypoints and telling the drone where to fly, we start off by describing the environment in which we want the drone to perform the operation. So let's jump back into 3D. So we have a 3D representation of the environment in which we're going to plan the missions. So step one is always creating a so-called scene. Those colorful block objects are the scene in this particular case. And in the second step, once we have a scene, we're happy with the level of detail of the scene, we can start planning our missions. And this is actually what we've done in the previous demonstration. So that's scene-based workflow. So important thing to remember, we first start by creating a scene, and how we do that, we can go into the detail a bit later on. And as a second step, we plan the missions. And of course, as a third step, we synchronize that, we save that to the cloud, or if we're already in the mobile application, we just save it, and we can start flying the mission. Excellent. So this is a few words about the workflow. And this workflow is essentially kind of the quintessential, let's say, pillar on which all of Drone Harmony's technology is based. It's about inputting three-dimensional information about the world and using it to automate the mission planning. So next thing, map and 3D interfaces. So we already jumped back and forth from map and 3D interfaces a dozen times in this demonstration. And you see how every interface has its own advantages for us. So in particular, the map interface enables us to see where things are in the world. I can change the map type. I can, let's change it quickly to something like street. I can imagine how a top-down view of this environment looks like. I can remove certain objects and unveil what is underneath them, and so on and so forth. In particular, it's also easy to play with waypoints in case I need to do some sort of minor adjustments in the, let's say, X, Y dimension of waypoints. In contrast, in 3D, we have a completely different set of things that are easy for us to do. In particular, it's very easy for us to visualize what's actually happening, because since we're looking here at three-dimensional assets, the three-dimensional view really helps us imagine how both the scene will look like and how the flight mission looks like with respect to the scene. It also enables us to interact with some of the primitives in our scene in a different way. Let me quickly zoom in here and pick one of the waypoints. So I can also interact with waypoints in 3 dimensions. So in particular, I can take this waypoint and I can rotate it if I so please. And seeing the things in 3 dimensions is very, very useful in some cases, because I have just a different perspective, and let's say the most true perspective on how this mission will play out and will look like in the real world. So 2 and 3D interfaces, they have different advantages, and it's useful to get used to jumping back and forth and seeing the things in the 2 different perspectives. So now that we've talked a little bit about the workflow and about the interfaces, and we've seen a first demo, let's kind of zoom out a little bit more and talk about the higher, let's say, constructs and higher level concepts that we have in the Drone Harmony platform. And this goes in the direction of sites and states. So when we are working in Drone Harmony, we always have a certain state. So the state is just the collection of all the scenes and all the missions and all the points of interest and so on and so forth that we currently have in our state. Everything that we just see here, everything you can interact with, that's the state. In contrast, we also have a slightly more local version of state, and that's called site. So let's quickly switch back to hybrid view. So we see the view of the map and zoom out. So you see that if I zoom out far enough, all of these objects here in this area where we did the work collapse into a single blue circle. And this single blue circle is a site. So if I click on it, I can interact with full sites as well. So some of the simple things that we can do with sites, we can save them and we can zoom into them. We can show them on the map. So I can show them on the map. I click on this and I zoom back onto the site. So that's one thing we can do. But I can also save the site, and I can have several sites open at the same time. I don't have to work on a single kind of locus in space at every given moment in time. Let me give you a quick example of this. So I just moved to somewhere else, also in Zurich, but a bit far from where we did the previous work. Just zoom in somewhere. It doesn't really matter where for the sake of this demonstration. And what I'll do is I'll create a new item in the scene, just in the state. So I just place a point of interest here. That's all I do. So there is a new construct in the state. There's a new item in the state somewhere else. Now, if I zoom out again, you see that I now have two states. I have two sites, excuse me. So I have one site where we did the previous work, and I have a new site over here. And I can have any number of sites. And if you want to think about what is the semantics behind sites, sites is, as they might suggest, these are inspection sites or mapping sites. And if we're a larger enterprise, we might be working on many sites at the same time. And we want to be able to look at them simultaneously where they are located in the world. And we might want to zoom in and out to each one of them and perform some local work in each one. But the important thing is that we just have the ability to look both at the zoomed out view of the entire situation in the organization, let's say, and also at a single site. So what other things can we do with sites? So we can definitely zoom in into the sites. We can clear sites from the state, and we can save sites. So if I save a site, I'm only saving this part of the site. I'm not saving this new point of interest that I created here for the demonstration. In contrast, if I click on this one and I say save site, I will only be saving this piece over here. So sites are the basic construct that we can save in the cloud. And we can work simultaneously with several, but when we save it to the cloud, we save a site so that we have kind of a local representation of an inspection site or a mapping site. Some easy tools to help us navigate. Well, when I click on a site, I can zoom into it, so I can show it on the map. So that jumps straight back to this single point of interest that I created. And there is this button here on the right. If I click on it, I have a zoom to the level from which I see all the open sites at the same time. So let's click on it. And here we go. We jump back to all of the sites simultaneously. If I now delete this site, clear from state, and I click on this button again, well, then I zoom in a bit further to the part of the site which I created here. And now everything there is filtered out of the viewing, but that's the concept. So if I now press on this, I only zoom into this part. Excellent. So this is the concept of sites. Let's get back here. So now we talked about workflow, we talked about sites, we talked about 2 and 3D interfaces. So let's quickly discuss how do we even create states. So let's start from an empty state and start planning some mission from the beginning. Until now, I only showed you how can you do it on a ready state. So let's jump back into it. So what I'll do is I'll clear everything. So this garbage can over here enables me to clear big parts of the state. So I can clear all the areas, meaning all the scene objects, or all the point of interest, or all plants, or all of it together. So let's just clear everything and zoom back out. So we have a totally empty state now. And now we start by creating a scene, creating these 3D objects that we afterwards want to use to plan missions. So the first way I will show you to add scene objects to the state is by means of importing a KML file. So let's go again to the menu. And this time I will go to import data. And I will import areas. So import areas is a function that enables me to load a KML file containing georeferenced polygons representing the footprints of areas, buildings, whatever geometric objects we want. So let me just browse for this kind of file. And here I have one called Building Zurich. I'll open it up. I press on process, and it tells me that this corresponds to 24 polygons. And I ask it to add them, add objects. And this operation was successful, and I close it. So you see that this KML file contains actually quite a lot of information about the footprints of some buildings somewhere here in Zurich. Now you see that the 0M that's written inside each one of them means that they don't currently have a height. But it's not a problem. I can populate heights for some of them. So perhaps what we want to do now is we want to perform some inspection of this in this area. And perhaps those buildings, we're not really interested in them at the moment. They're not going to participate in any way in the flight that we're going to be performing here. So certain things that we can do, we can just click on them and delete them if we don't want them in the scene. So no problem to just delete scene objects like that. So let's just delete a few more to make the whole situation a bit smaller. Okay. And actually, I can also keep some of them. They don't interfere in any way, but I can keep them like two-dimensional if I'm not interested in them. So I just quickly go to 3D and see how it looks like. At the moment, those are flat objects. Okay. Let's get back to 2D and close this menu over here. So let's just start now populating some more information about the scene. So let's say that this building has certain height, and I'll give it a height of 50 meters here. And I'll populate some heights for the other buildings as well, just quickly, because we want to have a three-dimensional scene. Let's say this one is 8 meters. I'm just populating some heights, and of course, where do we know these heights from? Well, this depends, of course, on the use case. One can have some, in many cases, one has some CAD information or can measure these quantities. But the more information we can give Drone Harmony, the better it will plan the missions for us. So we're really taking the time to try to get the scene as accurate as possible. Let's jump quickly back to 3D. Now you see that I've populated height informations about some of the buildings. And perhaps I don't care about these ones. I can keep them in there. They don't really interfere, but I can also delete them if they annoy me. It's not so important. But let's say I'm going to perform some flights over in this area. Let's go back to 2D. Before we start planning missions, let's also populate some information about these trees that are around these buildings, because these trees will also be relevant for mission planning. So here I want to use a different tool. I want to use the polygon tool. So this is a tool here in the left menu. I pick it, and then I can start just drawing a simple polygon. Now, this polygon won't create a mission. Again, this is a tool for creating an object in the scene. So I'm just creating a polygon in the shape I like. Let's say I'm not being very, very careful here outlining the trees. One can take as much time as one wants, but I'll just be a bit quick. Let's give these trees some color that will tell me that this is the tree line, green. And let's also give them a height, let's say of 6 meters. Okay, that's good. And just quickly, I'll also outline the trees on this side. Maybe just this part. I don't, oh, let's edit this shape a bit, make it a bit bigger. Okay. And again, let's color this guy green and give it a height of 6 meters, because that's the height of the tree line over there. Okay, let's quickly jump back to 3D. And you see, I always jump from map to 3D because certain things are easy for me to understand and to act on in 2D, and some are just easier to see and to imagine in 3D. But the thing to keep in mind is that the 3D information is the information that's actually being used when we plan missions. So it's always also good to look in 3D, at least to understand what will actually happen. Okay. So now, next thing, let's say that we want to plan some missions. So let's plan a mission for this building here. So I will plan an inspection mission. This time I will use so-called perimeter verticals mission. So when I choose a perimeter verticals mission, I'm again asked what building or what structure I want to apply it to. This is the building I want to do it. And this mission is really great for inspecting facades or perimeters of certain things. I choose my takeoff and landing. And here I am again in the well-known interface by now, where on the right I see what is happening and on the left I'm populating parameters. I can change the offset from the walls of the structure. Let's make it a bit smaller, let's say 9 meters. And I can also populate things like how much overlap I want to have and what part of the circumference of the building I actually want to cover. So let's say I want to cover the entire circumference of the building. So here I have a nice little facade inspection mission that is being planned for me. And you see that in places where there are obstacles, the mission planning is automatically adjusting the mission to avoid these obstacles. That's why it's very important to input as much information about the environment as possible when we generate these kind of complex missions. Let me click on generate, and here I have my facade mission just ready to be flown. I can save it, I can synchronize it, and that's it. Okay, now in order to also see the mobile application, excuse me, let's just quickly save this mission and open it up in the mobile application. So what I'll do is I will go to my site storage again. I'll save this and I will give this a name, new site. And I can also give it a tag. I can say that it's somewhere in Zurich, and I can say that this is a facade inspection. So I can give it tags to help me search afterwards and so on and so forth. So let's save it. Excellent. So this finishes the second demo. And what I would like to do now is quickly go on to a third demo. And this time I will show you the mobile application real quick. So I'll stop sharing my laptop screen and I'll start sharing my mobile screen. Okay, so here we are in Drone Harmony Mobile. And Drone Harmony Mobile has a very similar feel and touch to Drone Harmony Web. We have the same two interfaces. We start with the map view and we have some tools to interact with the environment on the left. We have the plus button on the bottom right. So many of the things are really, really similar. Some of the things are a bit different because we're working with a touch screen versus a mouse and keyboard. And also, of course, the mobile application is the operational tool, which we use to actually execute the flight. So when you connect a drone to your mobile device, then a lot more appears and you have the option to actually start and fly a mission. So let's now go to the menu right here and load the mission that we've just created in the web application. So I will go to plans and flights and I will open a synced flight. So you see that as soon as I open the load menu, the cloud synchronization kicks in and it tells me if some flights or some new information has been synced to the mobile device. And indeed, some flights have been. So I'll open this new site, this thing that we just created in the web. And here it is, the same state that we just worked on in the web application. I have it here in my mobile device. And I can interact with it in almost the same way that I can interact in the web application. I can look at the missions, and the missions are now here in the right-hand side. And you say that when I clicked on it, it tells me this is a perimeter verticals mission. I can start flying it, pay attention to the play icon that has just appeared on the bottom right corner. And I can, once I'm in the field, I can, of course, look if the environment that we use to plan the mission corresponds one-to-one to what I actually see in the field. If not, I can make adjustments. There's various ways to make adjustments. This is not a problem. I can act, I can plan new flights and so on and so forth. Let's just quickly take a look in 3D. So here's our state in 3D. And as you can see, it's very similar to what we've just seen in the web application. We have slightly different tools to toggle visibility of different parts of the scene, but overall, it's a very, very similar interface. Okay, so this will probably conclude my demonstration of the mobile application. There's a lot more to really cover if one wants to go into great depth into the mobile application or the web application. But instead of doing that, what I want to do is really tell you a little bit more about some of the key usability tools that we have, and a few words about cloud synchronization, and then we will wrap up and start the Q&A session. So one important usability tool that's available both in mobile and in the web application is the undo redo stack. So you really want to use that, because this way you know that you're not worried about making any big errors. So let's say I've changed something in my state. For example, I changed the shape of this part of the scene, and I'm not happy with that. Well, I can just click on the undo button a couple of times, and I just undo everything back. If I change my mind again, I can redo this back. So learn all of these usability tools. They're extremely useful, and they just make working with the application much easier. Also, don't worry about losing states. Whenever you have a state you're happy with, just save it. When you save a state, it's saved as a copy. So you will always be able to, even if you save on the same name again and again and again, you'll be able to go back to any version of that in the past. Okay. And now, before I conclude part of the demonstration, what I want to say is that in the web application, let me just quickly go back over there. I'll stop sharing here, and I'll start sharing here again. Just want to tell you a little bit about how can you toggle synchronization on and off, because this is something that is an important topic for many people. Some people don't want synchronization to work, namely this fact that all of the mobile devices that use the same account get automatically all of the saved states from the web and vice versa. So for this, we can go here to the top right corner, and I'm again in the web interface now. And I can go to Profile. In Profile, I have several options, particular my name and so on and so forth. And I can go to Mobile Sync, and I can toggle on and off the synchronization of data. This is an extremely important feature. It's toggled on for me because I want synchronization to work, and I think this is it's a great collaboration tool. But in case you want to turn it off, this is an option for you, no problem at all. Another thing that you will find here is the settings. And in settings, it's great to set some defaults. If you're used to a metric system, you can use metric, but we also have imperial system. All of the units will turn to imperial units, and the default map type that you like. And also, what's your default drone? If you always use one drone anyway, or one drone model, you can just set it here as your default drone. You will never need to set the camera mode again when you plan missions. Okay, so that's that. Let's go back to here. So a little bit about the future of our platform. So Drone Harmony is all about automating data capture and making it easy for you to capture high quality data and to digitize your assets in a kind of reliable and robust way, even if you have many assets or many inspection instances for the same asset. So the main kind of technological track is always about improving the automation, make it easier for you to import three-dimensional data, to create scenes, to create plans that suit your use cases. A lot of this will come through the web-based interface, because we're really targeting the web-based interface as becoming the main planning tool. And part of it is enabling more complex imports of data. So you can currently import terrain, for example, in the mobile device, but we're working on the same type of features and much more enhanced versions thereof for the web application, 3D models and things like this. And we're also planning to enhance our hardware support. So at the moment, our mobile application is integrated with essentially all DJI drones that are SDK supported, but we want to add more platforms in this year. Okay, so before I conclude, so first, thank you very much for your attention. And after this webinar, we'll send you a follow-up email with a video recording link and answers to some of the questions that we've not been able to cover so far. Some important links and emails. So the website is droneharmony.com, and the web application URL is app.droneharmony.com. And for any support question, feel free to write to us to support@droneharmony.com. If you want to participate in our community and see many tutorials that we have, you can also take a look at our forum.droneharmony.com. Feel free to be in touch with us through the website or otherwise. And I think at this stage, we can open the Q&A session. So,
yeah, several in the outward, maybe goes to the outward. It's not to read that.
So I will be reading some of the questions, and I will answer them. So one of the questions is what happens if we have different roof sections? So we have a more complex structure than the one for which we planned the roof inspection in the first demo. What happens if we have several roof sections and we need to inspect all of them? So let me just quickly jump back to the web application and show you how this is actually done. It's probably easiest to show than to talk about. So the answer is yes. There is no problem to plan kind of a mission for multiple roof sections. So as an example, let's say that we have a building that's composed of this 12-meter part and this 8-meter part. And what we want is to inspect the combined roof of these two things together. So what I can do is I can just go over to the mission planning, choose top down. And here in top down, we will pay attention that we can choose multiple structures. So I can choose those two guys together. I can choose my lift-off location. And then I'll be populating my height information, let's say 6 meters. And once I input my height information, you see that my mission now, and let me just quickly toggle the visibility off for this other plan here so it doesn't distract us. So you see that if I have different roof sections, I can easily model this by just including several pieces in my scene. I can generate this mission now, and here I have a mission for 2 different roof sections. But the number of roof sections is unlimited. You can have an arbitrarily complex building and have this kind of mission planned for it. And this is common to some of the missions in Drone Harmony. It's not just the top down. There are missions that are designed for, let's say, combinations of structures in the scene, not just a single structure. Okay. Let's go back to here. Let's go back to Q&A. So one other question that's being asked is about iOS compatibility. We definitely have iOS compatibility on our roadmap, and we're currently refactoring our, let's say, the entire mobile side of the technology to be able to support more platforms, both on the hardware, on the drone support side, and on the mobile devices support side. And we're hoping to be able to have some sort of beta for iOS release towards the end of the year. Another question is about plan names. So plan names and names to, let's say, more complex naming schemes for various aspects of the scene and the environment is something that we want to be including quite soon. We'll be refactoring some of these things as well to be able to have much more meaningful ways of naming plans and parts of the scene. So thank you for that question. So there's one or two questions about kind of the working workflow. Does it is it possible to plan something in the web application and then load it to the mobile devices? So absolutely. In fact, the way that we design the platform and the way we're going to be pushing it forward is we're going to make the website, the web application, the most powerful planning tool. So we do envision that in the future, a lot of the more advanced planning capabilities will first land on the web, and then the synchronization capability will be the piece that will take care of distributing the work to the mobile devices and to the operators. One other aspect that we'll be working on is related to roles and organizational structure within the application. So perhaps who can have access to what types of missions and so on and so forth. So that's something that we will add in the future. We have some of that on our 2020 roadmap, but definitely the more time passes, the more such features will be included. There are some questions related to possible exports. So missions can currently be exported as a CSV file, but we plan different kinds of exports in the future. In general, everything that's related to imports and exports will be something that we'll be working hard on, in particular on the import of 3D data side, the ability to add more types of data to your scene will be something that will be a very, very key aspect of the roadmap in the following year. And on the side of exports, this will touch upon the exports as well. So one thing that we plan to add is KML file export, but the roadmap on that side is rather thick. We're planning rather, let's say, big features for enabling this kind of support of file formats and imports and exports. So one question that's asked is about what happens when we actually execute a flight. What happens to the built-in obstacle avoidance of the drones in, let's say, of a DJI drone when we execute the mission? So the answer is that drone harmony is not affecting these parameters. So you can use a DJI application to control the obstacle avoidance features of the drone itself. What happens then in drone harmony is that we just take over the same parameters and we don't change them. So if you had obstacle avoidance turned on, we don't turn it off by no means. And this is an important thing to know. So there are some questions related to mission speed. So at the moment, when you execute the flight, you select this execution speed. And the execution speed can, however, be impacted or changed during the execution. So there are two main ways to do so. If you started too slow and you feel that you want to accelerate the mission, then there is a kind of tachometer button during the execution in the mobile device that appears on the left side of the menu. And if you use that button, you can control the speed, you can adjust it. Another thing you can do is you can use the RC and use kind of the throttle, the forward and backward stick, in order to accelerate and decelerate the drone. The drone will not fly forward and backward. It will continue flying along the pre-programmed flight path, but it will fly either faster or slower. So one thing that it's sometimes useful to do is if your mission has two different parts that are two different places where the data is being collected, let's say from roof 1 and roof 2, and what you want, and the distance between these roofs is a bit far, and you set a slow speed for the mission, then the drone will fly slowly between roof 1 to roof 2 when it finished with one and it wants to move on to the next. So what you can do is in that transition, you can accelerate the speed of the drone and then leave the stick again as soon as the drone reaches the next roof. So there's different tricks you can use during the execution to accelerate or decelerate some of the execution of the mission. You can even rewind it. If you pull the stick all the way back or a lot back, you're actually rewinding the execution of the mission, and then when you leave the stick, you can continue along the path. So this too is something that can be useful in some cases, but touching the stick during automatic execution is something that should be done only if you feel really secure about interfering with the automatic execution of the mission. So one of the questions is about what happens if I actually start the drone from a different place from where I plan to start it. So this is a great question. So there's several things to know here. So one thing is the altitudes. So waypoints have altitudes, obviously, and the altitudes are recorded as relative altitudes above the starting location. So one important thing to bear in mind, if you start from a different place from where you plan the mission, you should really start from a different place that doesn't have a very different elevation from the planned place, because that will affect your relative altitudes. But apart from that, there is absolutely no problem to start the drone from a different place. But that's just one thing to bear in mind. One other thing to bear in mind is when you plan the mission, you plan to start it from a certain location, and the mission planning engine took care of obstacle avoidance during planning. So to avoid all of the scene objects during the planning. Now, when you start the drone at a different location, this initial approach, the first waypoint in the mission, might be affected. So it's advised to look at the 3D view during the mission launch. So when you launch the mission, you pass through several windows. And one of the windows shows you a 3D view of the trajectory from the current location of the drone, not from the planned location, but rather from the current location of the drone to the first waypoint. So if you start from a different place, it's very important to inspect that part of the flight and to see that this is obstacle-free. So it's generally advised to plan the mission start from where you intend to start the drone, but it's not inherently a big issue to not do so. It's totally okay, but it's good to use the tools available in the software to just guarantee that your flight will be a good one. Okay.